In this guide, I'll be teaching you everything that you need to know about the Sunfury Fire Mage in 11.1. We'll go over talents, rotation, stat priority, gear, consumables, enchants, and even any macros that I use. Starting with the talents, I'll first go over some of the most notable pickups from the class tree, starting with the Mythic Plus build. For Mythic Plus, dependent on the dungeon that you're clearing, you might want access to Spell Steal and Remove Curse, as these are some great utility nodes that can help out your group. On screen, I put together a list here of which dungeons and abilities you'll want each ability for. But if you are confident that you don't need them, then you can swap these out for more defensive pickups like Winter's Protection. We'll pick up our baseline defensives on the left and right side with Mirror Image and also Alter Time, two great defensives to add to the plethora of defensives that we already have as a mage. Remember that mirror images have a very long duration, so be liberal with how you use them, and they are also particularly great for fire as a distraction to the mobs if you do rip threat as you're so bursty. We'll also be picking up Master of Time just under Alter Time, which can be used to reset your blink quickly if you do catch yourself needing an extra charge in a bad position. Straight down the middle, we'll be picking up Shifting Power. This is an essential part of all mages' toolkits to allow us to get massive cooldown reduction on most of our mage abilities. You'll mostly be using this to get your combustion back, but as a more advanced mage, you can use it to rush crowd control back to save your group from wiping to a cast going off. And then in this middle area, we have some flex points that we can change around. For now, I've got a point in Cryo Freeze, but you can easily swap this point out for a point in Reduplication to buff your mirror images. Or again, you could swap this out for Winter's Protection or even Diverted Energy. I do have a point by default in Mass Polymorph here, but again, you can use this for more defensive if you want to grab Reduplication, or if you do want the extra crowd control, then you can put it in Ring of Frost, but both these abilities are generally used to set up pools because damage will break the effect. We will, however, be locking in Blast Wave and also Dragon's Breath as our reliable forms of AoE crowd control. Dragon's Breath, however, can be swapped out for Supernova on the same choice node as a ranged AoE Disrupt, but generally I do find Dragon's Breath to be more reliable. And lastly, down the bottom of the tree, we'll pick up our two biggest defensives in Greater Invisibility, a 60% damage reduction that can also be used to drop threat, as well as Ice Cold down the bottom left, turning our Ice Block immunity into a 70% damage reduction defensive that still allows us to control our character for the duration. There are some scenarios where you may want to keep the old Ice Block, but generally Ice Cold is the better pick. In the middle, we'll also be picking up Time Anomaly for some extra DPS and fun. At any moment while you're in combat, you have a chance to gain Combustion for 5 seconds, you can gain 1 Fire Blast charge, or even Time Warp for 6 seconds. Let's quickly talk about the Sunfury talents then. As a Sunfury Fire Mage, we build Spellfire Spheres that increase our damage and enable our Phoenix to cast exceptional spells. In this tree, we have 3 different choice nodes. In the middle here, I generally pick Lessons in Debilitation because I'm generally playing with Dragon's Breath. This will make our Arcane Phoenix spell steal when it's summoned and also when it expires. You do have to be careful in Theatre of Pain here on the platforms in the Coltha Rock Wing, as at this current moment, the Phoenix is responsible for ninja pulling the Maguses on the left and right sides of the platforms. But if you do opt for Supernova and turn it into a Gravity Lapse, then the Gravity Lapse will suspend the targets in the air for 3 seconds, but do note that this does target cap the ability. In the bottom left, we'll be picking Savor the Moment to increase the duration of our combustion, and on the right side, we'll be picking Rondomancy to allow our spheres to stack up to 5 times. We'll cover the more impactful parts of the Sunfury tree in the rotation later. Moving on to the fire-specific talents then, we're going to continue with the Mythic Plus build. We'll start by picking up our 2 main critical strike builders in Phoenix Flames and also Fire Blast, as well as Scorch on the left here, which is a guaranteed crit when the target is below 30% health. On the right side, we start to pick up the Mythic Plus defining choices of the build. Lit Fuse gives a chance for our Fire Blast to turn the enemy into a living bomb that explodes for AoE damage and creates more living bombs. Skipping quickly down the right side, we'll pick up talents that increase the chance of this proccing and increases the damage of the bombs, as well as allowing it to apply Ignite, which Flame Strike can now also do too. Quick Flame further buffs our Flame Strike, which is essential for our mass AoE damage, which then takes us down to Feel the Burn, which is an important buff that we need to maintain throughout our rotation. This keeps our mastery boosted by constantly using Fire Blast and Phoenix Flames. Down the middle, we'll obviously pick up Combustion, which is our main bursty cooldown that we get massive amounts of cooldown reduction on from further choices. One of those being Kindling, which causes all of our critical strikes to reduce the cooldown of Combustion by 1 second. And Unleashed Inferno right down the bottom further decreases the cooldown massively, while also buffing up our spenders. The final point that I want to talk about is Phoenix Reborn, which occasionally buffs up your Phoenix Flames by 200% and also refunds its use. This will light up your Phoenix Flame spell so you know exactly when to use it. Moving over to the raid or single target build then. On the class tree, we can most likely to afford to drop more of our utility for extra defensive potential, but do double check the content you're clearing before making this decision. And we can also make the same changes with the flex points that we spoke about earlier. In the middle, the Sunfury talents will stay exactly the same as the Mythic Plus build, and then moving over to the fire tree will make some considerable changes, placing all of our emphasis on the left side of the tree. Firstly, we'll pick up Improved Scorch, which is going to greatly buff our execute damage, causing the target to take 14% increased damage from us once it's fully stacked. And then to bolster our execute damage even further, we'll take Molten Fury down the bottom, which is going to increase our damage by a further 7% when the target's below 35% health. Master of Flame will buff our Ignite, which pairs very nicely with Controlled Destruction, causing Ignite to be one of our highest damage sources even on single target. And finally, we'll path down to the bottom left where we'll grab Pyromaniac, which has a small chance to repeat our Fire Blast at 50% effectiveness. And the final point we'll pick up is Hypothermia, giving us a low chance to proc a state for 5 seconds where we can continuously spam instant Pyros or Flame Strikes without needing to build critical strikes. This proc is also guaranteed after every combustion window thanks to our Sunfury hero talent. As far as stats go for the Fire Mage, Intellect is going to be your most important stat, but for secondaries, Haste is your most favoured stat by a considerable margin. This is then followed by Mastery for Sunfury and then Versatility. Critical Strike is your least desired secondary. I'd recommend crafting a weapon first, ideally the Vagabond's Bounding Baton Staff with Haste and Mastery, and you'll want to apply the Ascension embellishment to it. If you can't afford the two-hander and have a good main hand, you can craft a Vagabond's Torch instead with the same Ascension embellishment. Next, I'd recommend crafting an off piece of gear, again likely Haste and Mastery, with a Writhing Armor Binding embellishment to double the effects of your Ascension. For trinkets, your best in slots will be the Eye of Kazan and Mug's Moxie Jug. This pair gives you a lot of intellect and critical strike, and this crit is converted to Mastery during combustion. House of Cards is also an amazing trinket that will grant you crazy burst on a 1.5 minute cooldown when paired with combustion, which is likely going to be the preferred choice for Mythic Plus. However, these choices are all from raid, so if you're not clearing Undermine, you can pick up the synergistic Brutarializer as these barrels passively explode from ignite damage, or you can pick up some passive statistics like the Reverb Radio or Card Blaziken Wax. You can, however, opt to buy the raid trinkets with a Puzzling Cartel chip currency. With these coins, I'd first recommend buying the Eye of Kazan and either House of Cards or Mug's Moxie Jug. House of Cards is likely the better choice for Mythic Plus, as I've already said, and Mug's Moxie Jug is better for raid. After this, you'll buy the Jasta Diamond, which boasts great stats, especially from its proc. And then finally, you can buy another ring in the miniature roulette wheel, or even Styx's metal detector, depending on what your current gear looks like. Buying both rings will allow you to replace Circe's Circlet, which you'll want to equip until you find a nicely statted haste ring at 662 item level. While playing with Circe's, you'll want to gem with Stormbringers, Fathom Dwellers, and Windsingers for the extra stats, as shown here. For enchants, you'll want to put Stormrider's Fury on your weapon. You'll enchant with Avoidance on your cloak and braces to help you become a tad more tanky. Crystalline Radiance will be your chest enchant. On your legs, you'll rock with the Frozen Spell Thread. You can choose between more health or more movement speed for your boots. And for your rings, generally, you'll go with Radiant Haste. For consumables, you'll always be running with a Flask of Tempered Swiftness and Algari Mana Oil on your weapon. Tempered Potion will be your DPS potion of choice, with the Algari Healing Potion being your go-to healing potion. For your food buff, you'll want to consume a feast ideally, but Beladar's Bounty is a good backup as some personal food. And lastly, for your gems, you'll want to run with one Culminating Blasphemite, and then you should make sure to use one of each gem type to max out the Blasphemite's crit effect. Ideally, you'll go with a Quick Ruby, Onyx, and Sapphire alongside a Versatile Emerald, and then fill any remaining slots with Versatile Emeralds. Finally, getting into the rotation then. The basics of the Fire Mage rotation includes chaining back-to-back critical strikes to trigger a Hot Streak, which allows you to instantly cast a Pyroblast or Flame Strike. Fire Mages are one of the few specs in the game that can cast abilities during their current cast, so you can create these hot streaks by fishing for critical strikes with Fireballs, and then using a Fire Blast to convert your heating up proc into an instant Pyro or Flame Strike. During combustion, your main DPS cooldown, all abilities are guaranteed to critically strike, which dramatically speeds up the rotation as Hot Streak is always being triggered. The final basic tip is not to overcap charges of your main crit builders, Fire Blast and Phoenix Flames, as these abilities have a short cooldown and will increase your hot streak generation massively when used well. Now, getting into the opener, we'll start with single target. You'll start by pre-casting Pyroblast, which you immediately follow with a Phoenix Flames. Here we'll use our Tempered Potion just before our previous abilities land, as well as any trinkets or racials. Then we're going to cast a Fireball, and towards the end of this cast, we're going to use our Combustion and also a charge of Fire Blast, as both of these spells can be cast while we're already casting. However, if you were lucky and the pre-pulled Pyro and Phoenix Flames both crit, you can skip out on the Fire Blast charge we just used. This then allows us at the end of the Fireball cast to use our instant Pyroblast, This pyro will then crit at the same time as the fireball, so we can then instantly use a pyroblast again. Then we're going to fire blast, followed by another pyroblast, into another fire blast. Now if you have the Mechagon braces, here is where you'll activate them, which refunds a charge of fire blast. Then we're going to pyro, straight into another fire blast and into a final pyro. Following this opener, you'll proceed with the following combustion priority list. Remember, all your spells inside combustion will crit, so you're just going to be weaving pyroblast in between builders. So your highest priority is pyroblast with hot streak active. Then we're going to use Scorch if improved Scorch is about to fall off. The target does need to be below 30% health here for this to be relevant. After this, we'll use Fire Blast, followed by Phoenix Flames, and finally we'll use a regular Scorch inside Combustion when we have nothing else to press to generate a hot streak. Outside of Combustion, you'll instead follow this priority list. You'll first cast Pyroblast with a hot streak, and then we're going to cast Pyroblast with Hypothermia active. During this Hypothermia, we're then going to cast Fire Blast if we're about to overcap on charges, or also to keep up our stacks of Feel the Burn. Preferably, you'd do this when you can convert a heating up into a hot streak. After that, we'll cast Shifting Power to reduce our cooldowns. Here, we'll again cast Fire Blast, but only to avoid overcapping. Then we're going to use our Combustion while we cast another fire spell so that it guarantees its crit. Our next priority is to cast Scorch if the target is below 30% health and improved Scorch is about to fall off. Then we cast Phoenix Flames, followed by Fire Blast while we're casting a Fireball or Scorch. Then we're going to use Scorch if the target is sub 30% HP. And finally, we'll cast Fireball as a filler. For AoE, the only change you'll make is replacing your Pyroblast finisher with a Flame Strike on 5 or more targets, or if the pack is going to die very quickly. That being said, if there's a high HP or scary mob and the target count is still around 5, personally I'd still use Pyroblast to nuke down the priority target and let my Ignite passively take care of my AoE damage. This damage loss does increase for every extra target above 5, so keep that in mind. So if there was 20 targets, let's say, and still a priority mob was present, then I'm going to be Flame Striking. We'll now move on to some more advanced tips for the Fire Mage for people looking to min-max. Generally, outside of Combustion, you'll want to use your instant pyros immediately after casting a Fireball. This is because there's a slight grace period if both of these abilities strike simultaneously, meaning the crit will always take priority no matter which one hits first. Chaining these together doubles your chance of getting a Heating Up or Hot Streak proc, which then allows you to Fire Blast inside the next Fireball to follow that Fireball with an instant Pyro, continuing this chain. Using a Focus Scorch macro can also greatly increase your Hot Streak generation. In AoE, there will be targets that become executable quicker than others, so if you place these on your focus while you're still feeding your damage into the main priority target, it allows you to Focus Scorch them for guaranteed crits without having to swap targets back and forth and lose lots of damage. Finally, ideally you'll go into Combustion with a Hot Streak ready and cast Combustion towards the end of a Fireball or Scorch cast. This will allow you to double Pyro as soon as you enter your main cooldown. And lastly, here's a few macros that I use as a Fire Mage. I'll leave a paste bin in the description for you guys to copy over. As we've just talked about in the advanced tips section, I use a Focus Scorch macro to generate more hot streaks reliably. A lot of people ask me about my Flame Strike macro. This simply removes the need for me to click the green swirly to target my Flame Strike, and instead just places it where my cursor already is. Just make sure to have good cursor positioning when using this. I also use a macro for alter time that allows me to cancel the aura. This is super helpful if you accidentally alter time at low HP, or in a bad position that will kill you when you teleport back to your original location. And I also use one of these macros for Slowfall. It's not that relevant, but it also allows me to easily cancel my Slowfall if I need to. The final macro that I use is a mouse over macro for Remove Curse. This makes using this ability a lot less finicky. But that's all you need to know for the Sunfury Fire Mage, so hopefully you guys were able to learn a few things. If you did, then please feel free to drop a like down below and subscribe to your boy. I'll be making plenty more DPS guides, and until next time, I'll catch you guys later.